Okay. So that didn't work. Okay, once I hear her, good morning to everybody. We hope that you stay dry and warm. It does get chilly, so keep your sweatshirts on and keep your scarf around your neck and your feet warm, and you'll stay warmer that way. Okay, so we are going to start learning Ezra, Sefer Ezra, chapters 7 and 8. And before we start, I would like to just review a little bit from last week, because last week was a very important lesson. Can anyone give us a little review of what we learned last week? It was important. Yeah. Anybody?
I will.
Okay.
The people began work again on the temple, and they checked with Darius, and he found out that they were to do it, and he said that they were to do it. They were not to be bothered. They were to be able to
Thank you.
Go ahead.
everything they needed. So therefore, the temple was finally completed. It was not exactly what everybody would have wanted. It did not, the Shekhinah never rested in it because there were so many things missing, the voices, the sounds, the people. And they dedicated the temple. And then was it the first Pesach they said they celebrated afterwards?
Right. Very good. Okay. All right. And what seemed to be the biggest disappointment of the people? Does anyone?
That it wasn't like the first temple.
Right.
That it was not like the first temple.
Right. That's one of the things that was a disappointment. But the prophets seem to present a wonderful vision of the kingdom and the priesthood, the construction of the temple, the return of the Shekhinah to Jerusalem, and the turning of Yerushalayim into the world's spiritual center once again. And the thing is that the visions of these prophets doesn't seem to come true. And this is a very big disappointment to the people. They had really thought that what would happen would be that everything would be restored just like in the time of Shlomo HaMelech, and it didn't really materialize that way at all. So the prophets seem to have oversold in a very big way what would be once the temple was constructed. And don't forget, we are really seeing in the people's eyes at that time that this is the rebuilding of the first temple, even though we refer to it as the second temple period. So it's a small temple. It was that was built. The Shekhinah doesn't rest there. There are the things that are missing beside the Shekhinah are the Aron, which was taken when the temple was destroyed. And interestingly enough, it was not returned to the temple by the Babylonian Empire or the Persian Empire. So, and the Kruvim and the Kaporet, which was the top of the Aron, and then on top of the Kaporet was the Kruvim, and then the Urim and Turim, which we talked about, was the name of Hashem in the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, that the Kohen Gadol could communicate with Hashem. So those things were missing and seemed to cause a lack of joy at the time. And so even though the leaders of the time were very joyous in rebuilding the temple, the leaders of Zerubbabel and Yehoshua, the Kohen Gadol, and the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, even though they they at the time were very involved in bringing the people together and causing some type of a spiritual revival, renewal. What happens is that this climax that the temple is finished heralds a period of really decline and days of small things rather than big things. And this is where we now start with chapter 7. I'm going to ask Linda, would you be so kind to read for us? You can,
Yeah.
we'll start off. Now, chapter 7 changes the tone of the Sefer Ezra because we are now introduced to Ezra, and the grammar is now first person instead of someone narrating this first 6 books. If everyone would mute themselves, it'd be very appreciated. I'm hearing breakfast dishes and all kinds of goodies going on there. So if everyone would mute themselves except for Linda, would you like to start reading, please?
Okay. After these things, during the reign of Artaxerxes, king of
Artaxerxes.
Persia, I don't have. Okay, king of Persia, Ezra, son of Sariah, son of Azariah, son of Hilkiah, son of Shalom, son of Zadok, son of Ahitub, son of Amariah, son of Amariah, son of
Azariah.
Meroth, son of Zerahiah, son of Uzi, son of Buki, son of Bishua, son of Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the first Kohen. This Ezra ascended, here's where we get to him. This Ezra ascended from Babylonia. He was a brilliant scholar of the Torah of Moses, which Hashem, God of Israel, had given. The king granted him his every request according to the command of Hashem, his God, to him. And some of the children of Israel and the Kohanim and the Levites, singers and gatekeepers, and the Nethinim ascended to Jerusalem during the seventh year of King
Artaxerxes.
He arrived in Jerusalem in the 5th month of the 7th year of the king. For the first day of the first month was the beginning of the ascent from Babylonia. And on the first day of the 5th month, he arrived in Jerusalem by the benevolence of the hand of his God upon him. For Ezra set his heart to expound the Torah of Hashem and to fulfill and to teach its statute and law in Israel. This is the text of the letter that King
Artaxerxes. And that's
gave to Ezra
Artaxerxes.
the Kohen.
Okay.
Can't say it. Gave to Ezra the Kohen, the scholar of the commandments of Hashem and his statutes to Israel. King of Kings, to Ezra the Kohen, scholar of the law of the God of heaven and master of it, on this date. A decree is hereby issued by me that anyone in my kingdom among the people of Israel and their Kohanim and the Levites who volunteers to journey to Jerusalem with you may go, because you have been dispatched by the king and his 7 counselors to investigate Judah and Jerusalem concerning the Torah, the Torah of your God, which is in your hand, and to transport the silver and gold that the king and his counselors have contributed to the God of Israel, whose dwelling place is in Jerusalem, and all the silver and gold that you may find in the entire province of Babylonia, together with contributions that the people and the Kohanim contribute to the temple of their God that is in Jerusalem. By means of this, you shall immediately purchase with this money bulls, rams, sheep, and their meal offerings and their libations, and offer them on the altar of the temple of your God that is in Jerusalem. You may do with the remaining silver and gold whatever seems proper to you and your brethren, and is in accordance with the will of your God. You may do. Furthermore, deliver the vessels that were given to you for the service of the temple of your God before God in Jerusalem, and any other needs of the temple of your God before God in Jerusalem, and any other needs of the temple of your God that may arise for you to provide, you may provide from the king's treasury. Well, furthermore, a decree is hereby issued by me, I, King
Artaxerxes,
to all the treasurers in the Trans-Euphrates region, that whatever Ezra the Kohen, scholar of the law of God, of the God of heaven, shall request of you, shall be granted expeditiously, up to 100 talents of silver, up to 100 cores of wheat, up to 100 baths of wine, up to 100 baths of oil, and unlimited salt. Whatever is decreed by the God of heaven shall be done by the king's seal for the temple of God, lest his rage befall the king's realm and his children. We also declare.
Okay, Linda, stop. Let's stop there. Becky, can you read for us, please? Becky, 24.
Yeah. Whatever,
We
Okay.
there for?
is that the right place? I think so. Whatever is decreed by God of heaven shall
It's
be done.
24.
24, Becky.
Oh, sorry. We also
24.
declare that concerning all Kohanim and Levites and singers and gatekeepers and Nittim, and whoever serves this temple of God, it shall be lawful to impose upon them any levy, tax, or duty. And you, Ezra, wow, you see Ezra, in accordance with the divine wisdom that you possess, shall appoint judges and magistrates who will judge all the people who are in the Trans-Euphrates region. Anoint men who know the law of God, of your God, or teach those who do not know. Anyone who does not fulfill the law of your God and the law of the king, judgment shall be swiftly executed against him, whether to be put to death, or to be uprooted, or to be punished with the loss of property or imprisonment. Blessed is Hashem, God of our forefathers, who has put such thoughts in the heart of the king, to glorify the temple of Hashem that is in Jerusalem, who extended kindness to me from before the king and his counselors and all of the king's powerful officers. I then strengthened myself in accordance with whatever the hand of Hashem, my God, gave me the ability to do. And I assembled leaders from Israel to ascend with me. These are the heads of the family.
Okay, that's the end. That's the end of chapter 7. Okay, thank you, ladies.
This is after Darius, right?
Okay, so
Sorry.
let's go back and let's go through this chapter, okay? Chewy is actually excited about this chapter, so so let's take a look at, okay, what do you think?
Okay.
All right. What do you think has happened here? Can anyone give us a little summary or tell us
Well-
what they heard just now?
Rhonda, it sounds like they, I mean, the king is giving him carte blanche to do whatever.
Right.
And it almost sounds like, he almost sounds like he would be a convert to Judaism. I mean, he is so supportive,
Right.
and it sounds like he's trying to cover himself in case this guy is his God, so that he will be protected. But it's just, we rarely see that kind of a, wonderful treatment of the Jews and
Exactly.
everything.
It's really startling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, exactly.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Why do you think that this happened after Cyrus? But Cyrus, is he a descendant of Cyrus, the King Cyrus?
Yeah, yeah. So basically he is, in the line of Persian kings. Well,
So what made him all of a sudden feel this way?
okay,
You know,
so let's start at the beginning. If you'll turn back to pasuk number 1 of chapter 7. First of all, we get introduced to Ezra. We learn
Right.
of his lineage. He gives us his full lineage of who he is, and he traces his lineage all the way back to Aaron HaKohen. So
Sorry, Rhonda, but it's hard to hear. I love the dog, but it's hard to hear.
yeah, I don't know what's going on. Hold on a second. We're gonna.
I think she's trying to give you her version of the events.
So, yeah, right. So what has happened is that we now are established of who Ezra is. This is his way of introducing himself by telling us exactly what his lineage is. And he leaves nobody out. There are a few generations that are left out, but basically we know that he goes back to Pinchas and Eleazar. We know that that's the son of Aaron. And he goes back to Aaron HaKohen. So there's no doubt in our mind that he is, at least his lineage, he has yichus, and it tells us that he is a Torah scholar in the way of the laws of Moshe Rabbeinu. So now we know that he's a very learned person. But what I find very, very curious is the first few words of the pasuk. Let's take a look at that. Okay. It says, following these events during the reign of, and it's Artaxerxes in English, and in Hebrew it's Artashasta, king of Persia. Now, following what events? What events? Anybody?
The celebration of Pesach.
Well, it
Does
could
that
be,
have
it
something
could
to do with
refer, it could refer to the celebration of the temple being
Mhm.
rebuilt.
Do we know how long it was between those two?
Well, clearly Ezra is not a young man. He's not a boy at this point. He's a man. And once we read the whole chapter, we get the information that he is coming at the behest of the king of Persia, king of the Persian Empire, and that he has a lot of responsibility and a lot of things given to him from the king. So when we say following these things, there's been a significant gap of time between the building of the temple and the coming to, Yerushalayim to Judah by excuse me, by Ezra. Now, we're not exactly sure how much time has elapsed. Some say, well, we hear that this is in the 7th year of, excuse me, of Artaxerxes. Now, you will read in some of your commentary in your Sefer Ezra that it's Artaxerxes is the same as Darius. No, Artaxerxes or Artashasta is Artaxerxes, not Darius. And so sometimes Jewish scholars, for the sake of keeping the Jewish timeline in sync, give different people different names and call the same person several people's names. I'm telling you, we are going according to the timeline of secular history because it makes much more sense. And our history, our Jewish history, fits into the secular timeline without gaps of missing time. Now, having said that, when it says following these events, I would like to tell you my theory, and my theory is as follows. Based on the timeline of all of that has happened, Ezra could not possibly have been given such carte blanche, such gifts, such notoriety, such power in the Persian Empire as a Jew, unless something had happened in Persia to the Jews or to the king relating to the Jews that is so significant that the king would be happy to bestow all of this on a Jew. What can you think happened in the time of the Persian Empire that would have made a difference in how the Jews were seen in Persia? We've studied it. What about the Purim story?
Purim.
What about Purim?
It comes in between.
I believe that, and if you look at the secular timeline, Ahasuerus is Xerxes. He is before Artaxerxes. I believe when it says following these events, that it could very well be hinting to the events of the Purim story. Because where in Persian history do the Jews get such positive treatment after the death of Haman? Mordecai is elevated to second in command in the Persian Empire. Esther is the queen. And the Jews have been given the right to defend themselves. And then in the commentary of the Purim story, it talks about who and how shall celebrate the Purim story. And what does it say about walled cities? It says that if it's a walled city, you get 2 days to celebrate the 2 days of the fighting of the Persians against the Jews against the Persians. And except it includes Yerushalayim. The rabbis of the Talmud include Yerushalayim. Why? Because the walls have not been repaired at this point. It is an unwalled city. Even though the Beit HaMikdash has been built, The walls of Jerusalem have still not been completed and built, and it is considered an unwalled city. And that's why the rabbis go back, and our sages say that Jerusalem is included in the walled cities as when Yehoshua entered into the land. So it is very, I believe that it's very, very coincidental that it would say following these events, and then we get such a magnanimous kind of letter from King Artaxerxes after the reign of Ahasuerus, who is Xerxes. So I believe that Ezra must have been a scribe at the king's gate, and perhaps he was known by the king through either Mordecai or some connection of the Purim story when the Jews were so favorably looked upon at that period of time once Haman has been murdered and hung. Do you see how that makes sense? Can you imagine, here is a man, all of a sudden he just appears. He just appears in the story of the Sefer Ezra and is given all of this stuff. No, it doesn't make sense that all of a sudden, what's this guy, dragged out of one of the Beit Knessets in Persia and say, okay, you're going to get endowed with amazing gifts from the king. He has to have had some connection to the king, to the Jewish community, some leadership. And the book of Ezra tells us nothing. It gives us no information. There is a big vacuum about where Ezra came from, what he was doing all of this time, how old he was, anything about his life in Persia. So this is my belief. I ran it by several people who I respect, and they thought it was a very thoughtful type of assumption, and for me it makes a lot of sense. So yes.
Wasn't King Ahasuerus and Esther had a child that was named Darius,
Yeah.
and he was at one point king.
So Artaxerxes comes after Ahasuerus, and then Darius comes. Darius too comes after Artaxerxes.
Oh, he comes after this man.
Yes.
Okay.
So this could very easily have been one of Ahasuerus's first sons. I don't know. We don't know. All right. So then after we read. We say after these events, and then we read the genealogy of Ezra, and then we are told that he is a brilliant scholar of the Torah of Moshe, and then we're told that the king has granted him every request. How unusual is this, that a king would give every request of a Jew to go back to their homeland, to go back with lots of money, a letter of introduction, and as we'll see further on, what other things that he bestows upon Ezra. It's not in our modern day purview, our ability to understand how any Jew would be given such amazing power and gifts. So it says in Pasuk 7 that some of the Israelites, Kohanim and Leviim, and then they define that in addition, the singers, the gatekeepers, the Nethuthim, those were the people who worked for Shlomo and David. They are all to ascend to Jerusalem, and it's during the 7th year of Artaxerxes, king of Persia. And it says that he arrives in Jerusalem in the 5th month of the 7th year of the king, and that so it takes him about 5 months to get from Babylon to Jerusalem. That's quite a lengthy trip. Okay, so what happens, he arrives in Jerusalem on the 1st day of the 5th month. When is that?
Elul.
Okay, and and he thanks God for his trip, and Ezra Ezra is going to begin whatever it is he feels his mission is to come to Eretz Yisrael. Now, the thing is, we don't hear anything else about Ezra in this chapter except what the king actually gives to him in a letter. And I think it's quite amazing that in the book of Ezra, we have 2 letters from 2 different kings, both giving power, one from Cyrus, Koresh, giving the power of taking a group of Jews who want to return. They go to, we get a very specific letter from Cyrus the Great at the beginning of the book. And now in chapter 7, we get a very detailed letter from Artaxerxes, who is now king. And the king says, and he acknowledges his Judaism, Ezra's Judaism. He even says that he knows that he's the Kohen, a scholar of the Torah of God, of heaven, and the way that the king talks about God, you would think that he's ready to take on Judaism as his religion. And he says that he decrees, and don't forget, once he decrees something, it is a law. He decrees that anyone in the kingdom at the time can go with Ezra, including the Israelites, the Kohanim, the Leviim, volunteering. He's ready for them to leave Bavel and to go to Jerusalem, and they can accompany Ezra. So he says for this purpose that he is going to, that he has fully and completely given permission for this, and even his 7 counselors. We know that that's the way the government worked, the king worked. He had 7 advisors, and those 7 advisors we know from the Shelley, can you mute yourself, please? I'm sorry. Okay, then we find that the 7 advisors are surrounding the king, and they absolutely know about this permission that is given to Ezra. We learn about the 7 advisors from Achashverosh. Haman being one of them at the time. And now he says that he is giving not only him permission to go with those who want to leave with him, but he's going to give him silver, he's going to give them gold, and not only that, is he's going to give them quite a bit of other things that we will find out soon enough. But his purpose here is that he's giving him like a blank check, because in Pasuk 17, after he says how much money he's going to give to him, silver and gold that you can take
Doesn't
with
give the
you.
amounts.
He says, so that you may purchase with this money with all haste, and you can do it quickly, all these things that you need for your temple. And he gives a list of all the things that he knows that needs to be offered to the temple. Now, this is exactly why I believe that something happened in the time of Artashasta or prior to him, immediately prior. They gave him the information. Somebody gave him the information of all these things that he needed about the temple. A king of Persia doesn't know that there needs to be a meal offering, and that a ram and a goat and a sheep need to, the offerings there, and libations. How would a king know all these things? He has to have had connection with the Jewish people, or somebody extremely knowledgeable, or Ezra must have been in the court of the king. And that's why he knows that he is so smart in the ways of the Torah of Moshe. So,
But Rhonda, do we know why he's doing all this, the king?
yes, and it says in here, we read it, there's a sentence here, and that's what we're going to go over. Okay?
Wait,
Yeah, thank you.
Rhonda,
Yes,
can I just say something? If you
Yeah.
look at in parallel at the Hebrew text, it goes over to Aramaic.
yes,
It's not Hebrew, it goes over to Aramaic. And now he's talking in the language so that all the people can understand.
exactly. It does go back to Aramaic so that the people of Persia throughout the kingdom will understand exactly what he's doing. It's not just in Hebrew. So that's very significant. Thank you for bringing that up, Eileen. That's very significant. So here we have,
Can I ask a question? Did the people of Persia speak Aramaic at the time,
yes,
Yeah.
even though they speak Farsi now?
Yeah.
Yes. It was part of the written language of the time.
Mhm.
Okay, so it says in Pasuk 18, so you and your brethren may do with the remaining, whatever is left after you buy all the things you need for your sacrifices, that you have the right to use it according to whatever you believe you need, according to the will of your God. And then in Pasuk 19, it talks, and the vessels given to you for the temple service. As much as I think this guy, this king is wonderful, we don't get back the Aron, we don't get back the Kruvim, we don't know what happened to those things, we don't know who has them, but it sure would have been nice if he says, oh, and you can take back the Aron Kodesh, but that doesn't happen. Okay, and then it says in 20, and any other needs of your temple, of your God, which you may require, it's all there for you in the treasury, supplied from the royal treasury.
Rhonda,
Yes,
perhaps the king was keeping the Aron if he felt so strongly about giving to the people and supporting their God, and perhaps he was afraid to give back, that there might be some power in that, and kept it for their people.
Oh,
Just a thought.
that's major speculation. It could be, yeah, who knows?
Of
We
course,
don't
it's
know.
speculation.
Right, okay. So then it says, in 21, it says, and in my name, I, King Artashasta, or Artaxerxes, issue a decree. And here is another decree, an additional one. He's emphasizing the fact that all the treasures in the Trans-Euphrates, the Trans-River area, which is also the province in which the kingdom of Judah was part of, where Eretz Yisrael was. He says to them in this letter, Ezra the Kohen, scholar of the Torah, of God, of heaven, he shall require of you whatever he needs, you let it be implemented expeditiously, quickly. Don't fool around with this guy, because I'm telling you, he's got my blessings. That's what the king is saying to him, to anybody who questions this. So, and then he tells, up to how much he gets. It's like King Ahasuerus says to Esther, you can have anything you want up to half. And this is exactly what he's doing. He says up to 100 talents of silver, and then he lists all the things with the oil and the salt. These are very important things to have in your life at that time. And then it continues. 20.
Rhonda,
Yes.
do we know what a talent is? What that refers to?
I don't know what that is.
Measuring.
It's a measure.
It's some kind of measuring, probably.
Yeah, it is a measure of it.
That I realize. I'm curious how much it was.
And I believe when Haman said he would give 10,000 talents of silver to the king's treasury to be able to destroy the Jews, I remember that there was an equivalent, and I'll look it up for next week. It's a lot. It's a lot. It is a weight, and it's a tremendous amount. Okay, then 23, it says, everything commanded by God of heaven shall be done by the king's seal. He's not fooling around. He's putting his seal for the temple of God. Okay, and here is the sentence that tells you why he is doing it. You ready? Okay, for the temple of God, for why should wrath befall the king's realm and his children? Do you see that?
Yeah.
No, what plus it?
20.
What number is it?
23.
23.
23. Eileen, you want to tell us what that is in Hebrew? Can you tell?
Hodai Mintam Ela Shmaya. That's again, and it's still in Amharic.
Yeah.
It's still in Aramaic. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Aramaic.
Okay, so what he's saying here is he believes so strongly in this God of Israel, of the God of Ezra, who lives in this temple, who's going to live in this temple, that he's doing this. Why? For why should the wrath? He's afraid. He's afraid that if he angers God, the God of Israel, that if something would happen to his kingdom and to his children.
And he has precedence to that.
He does.
What happened to Paro and Mitzrayim?
Exactly. Not only that, but we see that
Also to Haman.
that Cyrus, Koresh, says the exact same thing. Okay, that he wants to cover his bases with the gods to make sure that he doesn't cross the God of Israel and be destroyed. And where does he get that information? He gets it from the Torah scholars that are often in the palace in terms of advisors. Where would Achashverosh get any of his information, his Jewish information, but from Mordechai? Where would any of the kings get Jewish information but from a Jewish scholar? And exactly say, and how would he know that the wrath of God could be so severe? I'm sure that he knew about Paro and what happened to the kingdom of Egypt, the most powerful kingdom in the world at the time, and God brings it down with 10 plagues. So why?
Do you think it's possible that he was a secret convert?
No, no, I don't think so.
I mean, maybe he had, he did have in-depth discussions with Ezra and the Torah scholars.
Well, we
And
learned,
they convinced him.
well, we learned throughout history that Jewish advisors to kings do talk to the kings and give them information and direct them in certain ways based on Torah law. And the kings find it very, very helpful. We're going to find that out about Nechemiah very shortly, how he comes to Eretz Yisrael. So there is precedent that, well, look at Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel. Daniel advised the king how many times? These Torahs, and they believe it because these times that we're learning about were very religious times. People were religious. It is not like the times we live in today, where people are totally not religious. The whole Western world is not really religious anymore. You cannot say that it's a religious world anymore, where people are fearful of God. So in this world that we're studying about, these kings were very, very afraid to cross God. And why would he say the king's realm? He doesn't want to bring the wrath of God on the king's realm and his children. What happened to Paro's firstborn? He was killed.
They were killed.
There's the firstborn, there's his family, there's his lineage.
Right, 10 plague.
So why would any king, and for them, don't forget, it's a pretty recent history. It's not so far away. Right. So they certainly knew the history of all the kings of Israel by way of, especially Shlomo HaMelech, they knew about. So clearly, this is the reason that he is very generous, magnanimous, and very giving.
Rhonda, can I just say something?
Yes.
Because a thought has just come to me hearing you speak. I think in those days, if I'm not mistaken, I think that the Persian Empire probably had several gods, several different, what we would call pagan gods.
Right.
And I think that, what you said about the Purim story and the Jews becoming held in high esteem, and the story of how our God has protected us. I've just got this feeling that maybe our God was taken in and included with their gods as a matter of, fear and awe. It's just my feeling, and I think this may be where it came from, that he was just included with the rest of the other gods.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's very possible. Look, the God of Israel was known throughout the world. There's no question about that. The God of Israel was known. Many other gods throughout other parts of the world were not known, but the might and the power of God of Israel was well known. The splitting of the Red Sea, the plagues, what the Paro, what happened to Paro and Egypt, what happened to that God protects the people coming into Eretz Yisrael and subduing the Canaanites and creating a land in Eretz Yisrael. And they all know, certainly do know, they probably know about Abraham. So, and they probably know about Yosef. They know about, there are certain things that are, and the giving of the Torah, which seems to be undisputed throughout history at that time. So these are things that are given in the times of these people. So of course they, and don't forget, how many times did we read in Malachim that the king was not seen as a good king in the eyes of of our God, because he was evil and took on gods of other nations. So yes, people do these things. They take the God, the most powerful God, the God they know about, because they're religious people, God-fearing people.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so let's continue. And it says in Pasuk 25, and you, Ezra, you, by the divine wisdom which you possess, he acknowledges that Ezra is given special blessings by Hashem, greater than that of the judges and magistrates who judge all the people of the area. He's saying that, you're blessed with abilities far greater than people in my kingdom. For all who are knowledgeable in your God's Torah, you instruct those who do not know. He's charging Ezra with teaching the people when he goes back in Torah. He wants the people to be knowledgeable of Torah. And this is a problem that we know is actually true, because the people at the time of the building of the second temple are not knowledgeable. So the king, the Persian king, says to Ezra, you go back and you teach your people about the Torah. And and anyone failing to fulfill your God's Torah and the king's laws expeditiously shall be punished. He says you can punish the people. They're going to be punished if they don't want to learn about the Torah and about the laws of the Torah. And he says you have the right, listen to this, to either execute, uproot, subjugate subjected to the loss of property, or torture. What Jew has ever been given that kind of power within a king's empire to do all these things? Amazing. This is amazing.
Rhonda?
Yes.
This isn't exactly in relationship to a king, but look at today's history, how the Goyim want the Jews to come to Israel. They're also afraid. They also want something out of our God, hoping that they in turn will get an answer for themselves as well.
Well, they're hoping that because it says in their scriptures, it says when all the Jews live in Israel, in God's country, Eretz Israel, Mashiach's going to come there. Now, we don't know if it's our Mashiach, their Mashiach, the first coming, the second coming. We don't know what it is. But
they don't know either.
Right. So
but they know there's something coming.
But you will find in today's religious Christians that they often quote the pasuk about those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. That's a very big pasuk nowadays amongst the religious Christians. And so, but they're not giving, while they are donating to our country and helping us bring people to Eretz Yisrael, they are not certainly giving us what this King Artashasta has given. Anyway, let's continue before we have to close today. In 20, and he says, after he gives Ezra this power of punishment here, he says, he then closes his letter, blessed is Hashem, God of our forefathers. Oh, this is Ezra talking, for causing the king to desire this. Ezra is thanking God that this has happened to glorify the temple. And he directs towards me, he's thanking the kindness of the king. He's thanking God for the kindness the king has bestowed upon him and his counselors and all of the king's powerful lords. And he says, I, meaning Ezra, I then strengthen myself with the assistance of Hashem, my God, and assembled leaders from among the Israelites to ascend with me. So he's actually thanking Hashem for all of this, and he's giving praise, and now he's assembling the people. I'm going to shoot this dog. He's assembling the people to go with him. So we're going to stop the